a technology investor based in Southern California. But I was born here, and I grew up in Ngāti here. Many moons ago, but doing some things I think that are perhaps interesting and maybe different for those of you who are interested in governance. My governance journey started actually as a director and then as the deputy chair of Pananini Hiki Waitotara Corporation. So I've had some experience on the land and land management side. But really the last 15 years I've been investing in technology companies after a stint where I worked with Rachel in LA, where I was the Senior Trade Commissioner for NZTE for the Americas. So a quick bit of background. Before I jump in here, I'll tell you a little bit about the Finisterre journey. So I'm one of the founders, that's my partner Spencer Morn. We manage a team of about 25 people in our firm. We're on our 4th venture fund. We've invested in more than actually 40 companies at this point. In which case we're often involved in those companies as directors. But the process of running technology and innovation companies is very different to that of running natural resources businesses. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those differences today. A snapshot of some of the companies that are active, that we're involved with at the moment. So we've deployed just a bit over $500 million into technology companies over the last decade. And currently I'm involved with Plenty, as Tapuwae noted. I'm the CEO and a board member of that company. A company called Tavala, which is one of the leading meal kit companies in the US. CropX, which was actually founded here in New Zealand in partnership with Landcare, Manaki Whenua, but is now headquartered in Tel Aviv. I'm the chairman of that company. Zcal, it's a synthetic biology company that was founded at Massey and at Ag Research, so another New Zealand-derived company, now headquartered in California with operations in about 12 countries. Just announced a partnership with the world's largest feed company. And then Upside Foods, I'm a board observer there. That's a company that's making cultivated meat, so meat without harming animals, using essentially cell technologies and growing meat in cultivators. So this is probably the leading company in the world in that technology sector. And the common thread here across all of the things I'm involved in doing is a belief that we need to transform the food and agriculture sector that we've known for many, many years into one which is more sustainable, because climate impact is not coming, it's already here. I actually have very little confidence, sadly, that we're going to see an ability to arrest temperature rises above 1.5 C. And at that level, we actually start to see significant threats to our food system. For example, crops like coffee can't withstand a 2 degrees Celsius shift, neither can cacao for chocolate, neither can wine grapes, neither can avocados. Anyway, so food's not just about nutrition, but about obviously the enjoyment of food. And these are all crops that are actually under threat as a result of climate change. So my mission personally is investing in companies that can provide greater resilience both to traditional outdoor agriculture, but then also we're investing into companies that are new technology players within, let's call it more of an indoor setting. So Plenty, just to move on to that very quickly here, Plenty is the world's leading indoor farming or vertical farming technology company. As you can see in the shots there, we're literally growing fruit, vegetables, in this case leafy greens, in vertical towers up about 10 metres, so about 30 feet high in our production facilities. And we're able to produce about 300 hectares of food for every 1 hectare of ground that's planted. So it's about 20 times more than you'd see in a greenhouse, just to put it into context. And we're building the world's first large-scale vertical farm in Los Angeles, in actually Compton. So it's about to go live very shortly. As Tapuwae said, we're supplying Amazon, Whole Foods, our partners at Walmart. So we'll be at about 2,000 stores in October, selling, in this first instance, what are basically salads. We're about to break ground on our East Coast farms, which are growing berries and, I was going to say tomatoes, but tomatoes. Check myself on this. And essentially what we're doing is figuring out ways to grow fresh, nutritious fruit and produce without the sun in environments where the temperature outside doesn't matter, where it doesn't matter whether it's winter, whether it's summer, whether it's in the desert, whether it's in the high country. We use about 5% of the water. So you've probably seen some of the publications on how much the dairy sector uses to make a litre of milk, thousands of litres of water. Outside it takes about 15 litres of water to make 1 head of lettuce. So we use 5% of that. Most of the water we're using is in the lettuce itself. And so very little actually gets wasted as a result. We've raised a lot of capital to do this, so close to $1 billion at this point. For R&D, for technology development, we have about 400 people now in the company, growing. We'll double that number by the end of next year. So very different looking dynamics in technology-driven companies, perhaps, to ones that are utilising natural resources. So high growth focus for us, but also very much mission-driven. We're recruiting from talent pools that include, my head of engineering came from Tesla. She set up the Model 3 production line. And we're attracting people to this company in part because of the mission, the focus on arresting climate impact, the focus on producing affordable, nutritious food, and doing it hopefully everywhere. To do this, we've pulled a lot of capital in from a wide range of institutional investors, but also families. So we have some very large family office investors. We have my own firm, Finisterre, as an investor in the company. The Bezos family, Eric Schmidt's fund, Innovation Endeavours, and SoftBank, the largest venture capital firm in the world, based out of Japan. So all this is relevant. You might wonder why I go through this background, but all of this is relevant to understanding the task of growth and innovation as a director. So I often see this issue come up in the context of how do we deal with risk? And I would sort of argue that the task of a director or a governor is not to avoid risk, it's to figure out how much risk you can take. And so some of the basic questions we ask ourselves in doing this across all the different companies we've been involved with are, what's the place of growth? And how do you think about growth? And what is innovation? I think about innovation as net new growth. And what is that growth? It can be in profit terms, but it can also be in terms of how many people are employed. It can be in the context of taking ownership and control back of your assets, which could be anything from whenua to, of course, fisheries resources. And then how do you stimulate and grow that base within acceptable levels of risk? Key part of that is figuring out how you incentivize the management. So, a big part of what I do is essentially, you might say, well, you're investing in science and technology. I'm not really. Well, yes, I am, but I'm primarily investing in people. The critical difference between a winning technology company and one that doesn't survive, 99 times out of 100, is the people in the team. So you're effectively, when you're a venture capital investor, you're actually betting on the team. You're betting on people. And your job actually as a director is to support that team until they give you a reason not to. And so that's the last point. What are the non-negotiables? One of my non-negotiables is that the management team doesn't survive if they lie to us. So if they tell us something that they knew and it's not true, and they tell us they breach our trust, the only thing scarcer than all this capital I've just been talking about is trust. So how do you build trust and relationships with teams that you're going to be on the journey with for a long time? On the list of companies I showed you earlier that I'm on the board of, I've been on one of them for 10 years as a director. So we know each other intimately, and that extends not just to the team, but to the other investors around the table. So how are innovation-led companies different? This was the main slide I really want to spend some time on, just for directors saying, I'm not even sure I necessarily follow what you're talking about or what you're doing, but here are some principles just to think about, and how these are different from perhaps a land assets or resource-based organisation. Number one, pretty much all of the companies I've invested in this last 15 years were founded by somebody or by a group. And that founder team tends to have a huge level of personal commitment to the success of whatever it is they're doing. And so one of the big issues you have to deal with as a director is control. Founders typically don't like giving up control. It's like we took your capital, but we'd still like to stay in charge. Growing a team. How do you figure out how to add to the team beyond that initial group of people. Some of our smallest companies have got probably no more than 25 people in them. One of them's got over 1,000. So the scale differences between building those sorts of businesses and who can survive taking a company from the very beginning all the way through to really a big impact, it's a pretty big challenge to do that. I would say probably only 1 in 3 founders make the transition through the journey. Early revenue, most of our companies start with no revenue. Plenty had no revenue for 5 years. We have revenue now, it's growing quickly, but that's a big transition to make from having nothing and figuring out how to turn it into something. And part of that is figuring out product market fit. So does the market actually want what you have to sell? You may have some fantastic new idea for a beverage, for a food product, that's kind of most of the things we're working on, but is the market fit actually there? Which is quite different to saying, can I sell, for example, fisheries products? It's a mass market commodity, we know there's a market for it, we can kind of figure out what the prices are, same with dairy products, same with wood. We're typically not investing in companies that are making commodities, so we have to figure out what's the fit within the market. Also, most of our companies have deep intellectual property, so Plenty's biggest asset today, beyond its team, would be all the R&D we've done, and we've got more than 50 patent families and probably 180 patents, and that more than double the rest of the industry put together. So we've made a bet around investing in technology, and you'll find most venture capital firms have technology as some part of their nexus of what they're investing in. So when you think about building growth and innovation businesses, I think one of the hugely undertapped opportunities for Māori is leveraging science and technology. I know there's been a big push to hold CROs accountable, universities accountable, more to be done there. High growth expectations. So when we invest in companies, we expect them to grow 2 to 3 times year on year. So the fastest growing revenue company I've got in my portfolio grew 400% last year. Not 4%, not 40%, 400. It sounds daunting, but if you actually really hit product market fit, you'll be amazed how quickly companies can grow and how much benefit they can bring, not just in terms of money and economics, but in terms of learning and experience that comes from being exposed to high growth companies. We're raising capital, so it's pretty rare that we come in without having to put capital into these companies. That's what I do, I guess, for a living, but we typically have multiple investors. So how do we align on our expectations for how we manage those resources together? How do we get on the same page? Because we're often going to be on the journey together for years. And then lastly, exit. This is a critical difference. We are building companies to sell them. So what does that look like over what time period? It could be as much as 10 years, it could be 5 years. It's not a quick turnaround type business that we're involved in. So just wanted to really give this context for you to think about. This is, again, I'm not sure how much this is directly relevant to what you're all doing today, but hopefully it gives you a different perspective on what it looks like building companies really from zero to a significant outcome. And for us, at current time, I think we've got about 25 active companies. So we have groups of our team that are on the boards. I'm on, I think as I said before, on 4 of them. But this is not turn up for the board meeting, read your board papers once every 3 months. In between, there's a ton of hands-on work to help build these companies. And that's kind of where my journey has currently moved to. I was an investor and on the board of Plenty, but about 1.5 years ago, the founder and the rest of the board asked me to take on the CEO role in an interim capacity, and then about 6 months ago, when we did the large capital raise for the company, I decided to stay on as CEO. So I'm still involved at Finisterre, running a few of our portfolio companies as a director, but 95% of my time now is on the other side of the table, actually operating the company. And I wanted to sort of finish off with a thought here about innovation. I think one of the big misnomers about innovation is that it's all about smart science and great ideas. And it is. But it's not about scarcity of ideas. I've never come across an innovation company that didn't have enough ideas. In fact, one of the problems for many of them is they have too many ideas and don't know which ones to focus on. The real challenge here actually in building a growth company is, as a governor, as a director, is figuring out how to take the scarce resources and especially figuring out how to keep the best talent in your companies in order for them to grow. Which I guess in one sense you could call that execution, the ability to deliver and follow through on the big idea. But this has been something that I think we've learned through our experience of 15 plus years, is when I look back at the companies that have really knocked it out of the park and the ones that struggled, it often wasn't for a fantastic idea, it was the ability to bring that idea to life. And frankly, perseverance. You know, there's many dips on the road to getting to success. And one thing I've noticed about most entrepreneurs that we've supported, and I guess being an entrepreneur myself, is the never say die attitude, the ability to follow through, and frankly to not back down from the challenge. And that will often mean, this is where it's, I think, quite different being a director or a governor on an innovation-led company, making choices that could literally see the company blow up. And I think I've probably been involved with at least 10 companies that have gone under, and it's a pretty humbling experience going through that. And when you see, like, you've done your best, you've done everything you can do, the management team's done everything they can do, and you still come up with a big zero. Makes the victories all the sweeter, but also puts them in perspective. So in sort of final closing points on this, I also wanted to note that one of the reasons I've come back is that I want to just talk a little bit about a internship program that we're launching. Francine Weneti, who many of you know, has been helping me with this. Finisterre and our team are really interested in the future of entrepreneurship. We've got, as I say, more than 40 companies in our portfolio, but a much bigger network in the US in particular. So we're going to be launching an internship program for Māori entrepreneurs and STEM students to get actual work experience working in our startup companies, Silicon Valley primarily. And then ultimately we also have a base in Israel, in Tel Aviv as well too, although the launch part of the program is going to be on the West Coast. So Francine and I'll be kicking around later on. If anyone's interested in talking to us about this, we would love to also get potential candidates who might be interested in applying for the program as well. And looking forward to seeing more of you in my neck of the woods. Kia ora no tātou.